This video is about the retargeting features of AutoRig Pro. AutoRig Pro is a paid add-on, so if you don't already own it, you probably want to know, is it worth it? Is it worth the $40 that you have to spend on it? The short answer, of course, is it depends. It depends on your needs, financial situation, and so on. But overall, it is a great add-on with a lot of features that simplify most areas of the rigging process. It's intuitive, it's robust, so in my humble opinion, it's easily worth the $40. If you go to the Blender market and take a look at the products that are popular this week, you'll see that AutoRig Pro is consistently among them, week after week. So people obviously buy it a lot, and the add-on also has a 5-star rating. Many people have asked me to compare Rigify and AutoRig Pro. The thing is though, that wouldn't be a fair comparison. Rigify is only an automatic rig generator. In AutoRig Pro, on the other hand, rig generation is just one of many features. It has skinning features, a bone picker, streamlined export to game engines, a bunch of other small features that I haven't looked into too deeply, and of course the retargeting tool, which is one of the best on the market. So if you only compare the rig generation tools, then I'd say Rigify and AutoRig Pro are about equal. It's not that simple, but I don't want to go into too much detail here. I'll do a separate video on that. But overall, AutoRig Pro is a much more feature-rich and versatile tool than Rigify. And regarding the retargeting features of AutoRig Pro, they are excellent. Some of its strengths: the add-on is easy to use, stable, it produces great retargeting results, it is fast, and it has dedicated tools for IK retargeting, which I haven't seen in many other tools. And also there are features for tweaking the retargeted motion, which can also come in handy. The only real limitation that I can think of is that you cannot create complex relationships between the bones of the source and target rig when retargeting. That's okay, it is not a deal breaker in most cases, and there are workarounds, but it may leave advanced users wanting a few more features. So you can buy AutoRig Pro on the Blender market, and then you'll be able to download it. The only thing to note is that the zip file you'll download is not the actual add-on. Instead, it contains the main add-on and some additional tools that I'm not going to cover. So unzip these files and then you can install AutoRig Pro master.zip just like other add-ons. Without unzipping it, go to Blender, go to Edit, Preferences, Add-ons, click Install, find the add-on, click on the Install button, and then also activate the add-on. Okay, for the rest of the video, I'll assume that you have bought and installed the AutoRig Pro add-on. So first, let's try to retarget a mocap action to a standard AutoRig Pro humanoid rig. In many ways, this is probably the easiest retargeting task that you can do with AutoRig Pro. So here I have an unrigged character in the T-pose, and I'm going to quickly rig it with the AutoRig Pro Smart features. So go to AutoRig Pro Smart, select my character, get selected objects. I'm going to go for full body, and here add neck, add chin, add shoulders, add wrist, spine root, ankles, and I'll skip the fingers because my mocap data doesn't have any fingers anyway. Face setup I'm definitely not doing, and I'll simply press go. I'll take a quick look at this meta rig and see if I need to adjust anything. It looks fairly good. Okay, and then maybe I want to fully get rid of these fingers, and the correct way to do this with AutoRig Pro is to select your arm and go to AutoRig Pro limb options and just deselect all of these fingers options and they'll disappear, and same on the other side. And then I'll match the rig, go to the skin section, select my character, shift select my rig, and for engine I like voxelized, and with these settings I'll just click bind. I'll wait a couple of seconds, but I really like the results that this binding algorithm produces. It's quite a bit better than Blender's automatic weights. So let's go to pose mode, and here my character is already deforming. And pay attention to the fact that both arms and legs are in IK mode by default. AutoRig Pro has tools to change from IK to FK at any point. They are in the tool rig main properties settings. So here I can switch my leg from IK to FK, and same for the arm. So I'll keep the default IK settings and reset all pose. And now let's go back to the AutoRig Pro tab and focus on the actual retargeting, or remap as it is called in AutoRig Pro. As in other similar retargeting systems, you first need to set your source armature and then your target armature. The source is my mocap rig. Mocap is simply the name I've given to this rig. It can be called armature or source or whatever name you gave to your armature. The target rig will be the rig generated by AutoRig Pro. By default, AutoRig Pro calls it rig, so let's select that. And then we get this auto scale button, which you should press. This will adjust the scale of the source rig, and I'll explain why we do that later in the video. Next, we need to build our bone lists. And here's the great thing about using the standard humanoid rig in AutoRig Pro with the retargeting settings of the same add-on. Because the features work together nicely, everything is almost set up for us. If I click retarget now, I'll get a little error that says the root bone must be marked first. So what is the root bone? In the source armature, the root is this bone, the hips, that controls all of the other bones. And in AutoRig Pro, it is this bone, the root master. And here is the root master in the bone list. So I need to enable set as root for this bone. Again, this is the quick and easy version of using these features. I'll explain them in more detail later. And now if I press retarget, I'll get this menu and I just need to press OK. And my action will be retargeted. It's all looking good. If you go to pose mode, one thing that you'll notice is that the arms and legs are now switched to FK. So AutoRig Pro understood that it should retarget to the FK controls of its own rig, and it automatically switched to FK. Very nice workflow. And now actually, if we go to mapping presets and click this triangle here and choose Miximo IK, we'll get a bunch of warnings, but don't worry about this. It is just because this source rig that I got from Miximo is missing the finger bones, but that won't be a problem in the retargeting workflow. And now if I click retarget again, you'll see that we have the same motion, but now in pose mode, the legs and arms are actually in IK mode. And that is very nice. Having these limbs in IK mode can be very useful for cleaning up and editing this action. So once you have everything set up, you can go to your source rig, and here I'll switch to dope sheet action editor, and I have a bunch of other actions that I can use with this source rig. For example, a kick. I'll auto scale it again and simply press retarget. Okay. And now my character will be kicking. And all of these retargeted actions will be in the scene. AutoRig Pro takes the original name of the action and adds remap to it. So here in the action list, I can just type remap and I'll find all of the actions that I have retargeted. So if you want to keep these actions, you should actually press this shield icon here. Okay, then I can switch to my dance action. Save it as well. And now both actions will be saved with this file. So these are the basics of retargeting to an AutoRig Pro rig using the AutoRig Pro retargeting features. If that's all you want, then you can end this video here, but I would still advise you to watch until the end because these automations that AutoRig Pro does are based a lot on naming conventions. So if you modify your AutoRig Pro rig, or if your source rig is not from Miximo or Rococo or Unity or Unreal, then things may not work. So I recommend you stick around until the end. We'll learn how these bone pairs are set up. We'll learn what set as root actually does, how we can retarget to IK. Here we just did it with the automatic preset, but you can have fine control over that. And you'll also learn how to retarget to other rigs that are not from AutoRig Pro. That can be Rigify or really any rig that you have. Okay, let's continue with another example, and this one will be much more custom. We won't be relying on the automations done by AutoRig Pro too much. As usual in this series, I'm keeping things simple and adding complexity step by step. So here, even though things are getting more customized, this example that I have is probably the simplest form of retargeting that we can do, and that is retargeting to an FK rig. Meaning that this character is rigged with a very simple rig in which each bone is parented to another bone, and there are no complex relationships between these bones. There are no constraints, no IK, nothing. And also the character by default is in the T-pose, and that is the simplest example because the source armature is also an FK rig, and its rest position is also a T-pose. About 99% of all motion capture data that you'll find has a T-pose as a rest pose. I'll switch back to pose position and let's start retargeting. So in the AutoRig Pro Remap section, I'll set my source armature, which is my mocap rig. And the target armature is my FK rig. I'll then auto-scale the mocap rig. So what autoscale does is it tries to compensate from the size difference between the two rigs. And that will ensure that the retargeting is correct. This mainly has to do with the retargeting of the root of the armature. If the scale is not fixed correctly, then the retargeted motion may appear to move too much or too little in space. But let's continue and press Build Bone List. And here AutoRig Pro should attempt to match the corresponding bones between the source rig and the target rig. However, it doesn't seem to do anything. If you've seen my Rococo video, the Rococo add-on seems to do a better job at this. I think it tries to look at the names of the bones and matches them accordingly. And sometimes it makes mistakes, but at least it tries to do something, whereas AutoRig Pro just kind of goes, I don't know, dude, do it yourself. Maybe I'm doing something wrong, but that's the result I'm getting. So I'll do it manually, and that will be good practice. And also when we are done, I'm going to show you how you can save a preset so that you only have to do this process once per rig. So I'm going to select both armatures by shift clicking on them and then go to pose mode. And that will allow me to select bones of both armatures and check their names over here in the upper left corner. So the bone mapping process, or the bone matching process, all we need to do for that is to find the corresponding bones between the two rigs and match them in this list. So on the top of the list, we have the head bone of the source rig. So we need to match it to the head bone in the target rig. If I select the head bone in the target rig and check its name, I'll see that it's called head. So I'll scroll down a little bit, and here in this area, I'm going to start typing head and select the head bone. And it appeared over here. The next bone in the list is the head top bone. And as I explained in the previous video, this is a bone that you don't really need. I could go to edit mode and delete it. But in this case, I'll use it as an example to let you know that you don't really have to match this bone. If there are bones in the source armature that you don't want to retarget to, then you can just skip them. So let's move on, and the next bone in the list is the hips, and that is the root of the armature. Very important bone to match correctly. And here is the root of my target rig. It is also called hips, so let's type hips here, select it. And something specific to AutoRig Pro is that when you match the root bone, you also need to explicitly mark it here in the options as the root. So for the hips, check set as root. So the hips was the only special bone where we needed to do something special. For the rest, you just need to go through this list, make sure that you understand which bone you're trying to match, find the corresponding bone in the target rig, and enter its name in the field here. So here we're trying to match the left arm, and the left arm is actually the upper arm. In the target rig, that is the upper arm.l. So I'm going to find it in here and select it. And I'll just keep doing that for the rest of the bones. So it's important to know the naming conventions of both rigs, and if you don't, just click on the bones and check their actual names. My source rig has one neck bone, whereas my target rig has two. I'm simply going to select the first neck bone and ignore the second one. So I matched all bones except for the second neck bone, which is fine because it is controlled by its parent, which is the first neck bone. And also these two pelvis bones are not matched to anything, but that's okay because they're only here for the purpose of making my weight painting a little bit easier, and they're not supposed to move. So they can simply follow their parent and that will be fine. With that, I'm ready to click retarget, press OK. And if I play the action, the motion will be retargeted correctly. And that's it about retargeting the simple FK rig. Now, setting up these bone pairs was a little bit annoying, but if we scroll down a little bit, we'll find the mapping presets and there is an import and export button. Here I can export a preset, and anytime I have these two armatures or armatures with identical naming conventions, then I can simply import my preset again and all the bone pairs will be set up for me. So let's export, and I'll call this FK preset and save it. And we'll see how we can import this in the next step. So let's move to the next example. I'm going to hide this collection and I'm going to unhide the A pose collection. And here I have an almost identical rig. The only difference is that instead of a T pose, it is in an A pose by default. And that does matter in retargeting. So first I'm going to change my target armature to the FK A pose rig so that AutoRig Pro is retargeting to the correct rig, and click auto scale and again build bone list. And again, AutoRig Pro will reset all of these names. But now, because this rig has identical names to the previous one, the only difference between them is the default pose, but the names are the same. I can go down here, click import, find my FK preset, choose it, and there we go. All of our bone pairs are set up for us. And that is not just the names. If I click on hips, you'll see that it is already set as root. So all of these additional options are also exported and imported with these mapping presets. So as far as this is concerned, I'm ready to retarget. So let's give it a try. I'll click retarget and press OK. And my dancing motion was retargeted, but you can clearly see that the arms are behaving incorrectly. And that has to do with the difference in rest pose. The source armature is in T pose, the target armature is in A pose, so that difference between the initial pose remains throughout the whole retargeted motion. So let's undo and see what we can do about this. I'll select my source rig, or actually I don't really have to select it, and scroll down in the mapping area of AutoRig Pro. And down here we have the redefine rest pose button. But before I click it, I'm going to make a duplicate of this armature that I have. Just Shift D and move it to the side, and you'll see why in a second. So now I'm going to click the redefine rest pose button. And here you'll get two options, rest pose and current pose. And this confused me a little bit at first, and that is maybe because the first retargeting tool that I used was Rococo, which has similar options, but they work differently here. Basically, choosing between rest pose and current pose before you press OK simply defines whether AutoRig Pro will set your armature in the default pose, in the rest pose, or if you want to leave this current pose that you have right here. So in most cases, you're going to want to go to the rest pose and edit that. So I'll press OK. And here I have the source armature in its default T pose, and I want to change it to more of an A pose like my target rig. So the cool thing about AutoRig Pro is that it has tools to automate this process. I can simply select any bone that I want to match to the target rig and press copy selected bones rotations. So in theory, I can select all bones and press copy selected bones rotations, and that will change all of the bones in a pose that is more like the one from the target rig. But I find that that's not really necessary. So I'm going to undo, Control Z, and I'm simply going to select my upper arms and use this feature. For some reason, I'm finding out that the rest of the bones are not so problematic, but the arms really need to be matched correctly. But if you're not happy with your retargeting results, you can go back to this part of the process and try to match other bones and see if that gives you better results. So once you're happy with the pose, you have to press the apply button. And it's important to understand what this does. This actually sets a completely new rest pose for this armature. And that is a little bit problematic if you have more than one action. I'll switch back to pose position and let's find another action that I have for this rig. The jumping jacks show the problem clearly, so I'll switch to it. And let's switch this armature as well, which is still in T-pose, to jumping jacks, and scrub through. And you'll see that when the arms are down in this armature, which shows the correct action, the arms point downwards. And with this armature, which we edited with the AutoRig Pro tools, the arms will be clipping into the body. And that's not nice. So I'm going to undo. And so that's a problem that I find with the system. When you change the rest pose with these tools, it fixes the active action. So my dancing action will be all right, even though the pose was changed. But all other actions that I had for this armature will not work. So always keep a copy of this armature if you have more than one action. And I really wish there was a better workflow in this area. And I'm going to ask the creator of AutoRig Pro if there is. Maybe I'm missing something. And if there is, I'm going to let you know about it with an annotation, or I'll make another segment in this video. But anyway, now that I have the rest pose fixed, I can retarget and the arms will behave correctly. Now I'm seeing a little bit of a problem here. The fingers are flipped and the target motion seems to be floating a little bit above the ground. So I think this has to do with the scale. Auto scale does a good job, but it's not perfect. So I'm going to scale this source armature up a little bit and retarget again. And now the toe problem is fixed and there is a little bit less of a floating. If you followed along until now, then good work. By now you should know some of the most important basics of using AutoRig Pro for retargeting to any rig. So in the next step, we're going to up the difficulty a little bit and we are going to retarget to a Rigify rig. I've seen a lot of people having problems with retargeting to Rigify rigs, but I think these problems come down to not understanding the retargeting process and not understanding your Rigify rig enough. So let's switch to the Rigify rig. I'll hide my A-pose rig and switch to Rigify. And here I have a rig rigged with Rigify and it is also in the T-pose. So I want to avoid these complications that we get by working with non-T-pose characters and just focus on Rigify. Okay, so I already prepared this rig a little bit, but let's actually start from scratch. So I'm going to unhide the meta rig, which I still have in the scene, and I recommend that you always keep your meta rig around, do not delete it, and simply go to the armature tab and generate the rig again. And by regenerating, I reset all of my settings. So by default, the Rigify rig is in IK mode for both arms and legs. And one of the easiest way to retarget to a Rigify rig is to simply switch all limbs to FK mode. I'm also going to handle IK in this video, and actually AutoRig Pro has great features for that. It's the only add-on that I know of that has dedicated features for retargeting to IK controls, and they work really well. But for now, let's keep it simple and retarget to the FK controls. So I'll clear all transforms, and then under item, I want to go to my arm and switch it to FK, the other arm also to FK, leg to FK, and the other leg to FK. And now I can hide the layers that I don't need. I don't need the fingers, IK controls, and tweak controls. And I'll also hide the meta rig. Then we can go to AutoRig Pro and change the target armature to the Rigify rig and build bone list again. And then we are going to have to set these bone pairs manually again. Some of them will be simple to set up and others may be a little bit more confusing. So let's go through them one by one. For the head, we have a dedicated head bone. So let's just select that. Head top, I'm going to skip again. Hips, this is an important one. Again, the root. So what do we retarget the root to? We have to map that to the control that moves the whole rig with it. And if we just move the torso bone, you'll see that it moves the whole of the rig along with it. So in here, I'm going to search for torso and select it. The arms should be easy to select. You just have to keep the naming conventions of Rigify in mind. So the upper arm is called upper arm FK, lower arm is forearm FK, and the hand is hand FK. And it's similar with the legs. The upper leg is called thigh and the lower leg is called shin. But the important part is to retarget to the FK controls. So I'm going to go through the left part of the body quickly. Now I want to map the neck of the target rig, and we have a neck bone, a neck control bone in the Rigify rig. So I'm going to use that. And here's something that you could do. Go to item and switch the neck follow and head follow options to 1. What that will do is if I rotate some of the spine bones, the head and the neck will simply rotate with them. If I switch them to 0 or less than 1, you'll see that they kind of keep their original orientation, which may create an inconsistency in your retargeting. As much as possible, we want to make this rig behave as an FK rig. So set that to 1, and then we'll go back to AutoRig Pro. And now I have to set the limbs on the right side, which is exactly the same thing as what we did for the left side. So I'm going to go through this quickly. Again, making sure that I retarget to the FK controls. And now we came to the spine bones. The source rig has 3 spine bones. And the Rigify rig has these 4 spine bones. These circular widgets are spine control bones. And so we're simply going to skip the first one because it is controlled by the torso anyway. And we are going to retarget to the remaining 3 bones. And they're called spine FK 001, 002, and 003. And now I could try to retarget, and it will let me know that I haven't set a root bone. So let's go to the torso, which should be the root bone. I forgot to check the checkbox, and now I can retarget. And things will look almost okay, except for the arms again. And the problem is that I already changed this rig to an A pose, but I'm retargeting to a T pose. So let's undo. And instead of fixing this again, I'm going to use my rig copy, which is mockup 001. So let's select it in here and try to retarget now. And let's play through this. And this looks almost okay. I'm noticing a jerky motion in the shoulder. So let's see what this is about. So when something like this happens, most likely I have messed something up here in the bone matching process. And this seems to have to do with the shoulder. So let's see the shoulders. We can also use the search field here. So let's search for shoulder. And yes, it seems that I matched the shoulder to the left toe. So the toe should be matched to the toe in the Rigify rig toe.l. And the left shoulder is now matched to nothing. So let's give it shoulder.l. And now retarget again. And now the shoulder problems are fixed. And for the most part, this looks okay. But if you really pay attention, there is a little bit of a sinking of the feet. If we compare this to the FK retargeting, and we can kind of take the FK retarget as a ground truth. And you may notice that the feet in Rigify are a little bit less stable than those in the FK rig. And the reason for that is, I already explained this in the Rococo video, but by default, this human rig that Rigify produces divides the spine into two parts. The first two spine bones control the lower body, and the next two control the upper body. And the spine bones in the source rig are in a straight FK chain. So there are two ways to fix this. I can unhide my meta rig, go to pose mode, select the first spine bone, go to the bone properties, rig type, and here's this pivot position option. By default, it is set to 2, and that creates this division right here in the center of the spine. And if we set it to 1, then this division will happen at the end of the first spine bone. And that will fix our problem, so I'll just generate. I have to switch my rig again to FK. Hide the meta rig. Retarget again. And here's the result, and it is practically identical to the FK rig. And here, if I go to pose mode, you'll see that now this second spine bone controls the upper body. The first one still controls the lower body, but we are not retargeting to it anyway, so that's fine. And if you want to keep the original behavior of the Rigify rig, which is having this spine bone control the lower body, then we can do that, but it is a little bit complicated. I came up with a special technique which involves a separate intermediate rig. I'm going to show it to you right away. I'll unhide the meta rig again. Set the pivot position to 2 again and generate. Okay, and I could create this intermediate rig manually. And I mean, I could really go and create a new single bone and start building the armature that I need, but that would be quite cumbersome. So a better approach is to use our existing rig. So I'll just duplicate it, go to pose mode, and start selecting the bones that I want to extract, which are the FK bones. I could hide the layers that I don't need. Select all of the bones that I want to extract. Go to edit mode, press P, and separate them into a separate armature. And then I have to clean up this armature and constrain the original armature to this new armature. And I show this process in the Rococo video, so I'm not going to repeat it here because we have a better solution. Blender Boy, who created the Game Rig Tools add-on, also started working on Retarget Helper. And Retarget Helper will be an add-on containing kind of random scripts that may help you in your retargeting workflows. It is not going to be a full retargeting solution. It will just contain scripts that may support you. So I'm going to delete these additional armatures that I created, go to my original one, go to pose mode, hide the layers that I don't need, select the bones that I want to extract and constrain, and the root is not one of them. So the bones that I want are the bones that we have been constraining so far. The FK leg bones, the torso bone, all the spine bones, the arm bones on both sides, the shoulder bones, neck bone, and head bone. And now with Retarget Helper, I can just click extract and constrain. I can name my rig, press OK, and that will extract this armature based on my selection. And not just that, but if I go to pose mode for this new armature and move it, you'll see that it also moves the Rigify bones with it. And the character is not deforming, and that is probably because it's still in IK mode. Let's switch to FK. And now my Rigify rig is constrained to this new armature and it moves with it. And now the only manual step that we need to take is that we need to manually fix any parenting or hierarchy issues with this extracted armature. The add-on doesn't do this automatically, at least not at this point. And so in pose mode, I can check the hierarchy. So I need to make sure that the spine is parented correctly. and the hierarchy goes up like this. So this bone needs to be parented to the one below it, and this one to the one below it, and this one to the torso control, and the legs will also be parented to the torso. And I can see that the toes are parented to the spine bone. They need to be parented to the foot. So let's enable X mirror and parent. And now they're parented correctly. Okay, I can see that the shoulders are disconnected as well. All right, and this is looking good. I'm going to clear all transforms. And now I can go to AutoRig Pro, and I'm going to change my target armature from the Rigify rig to the intermediate rig. And because I extracted these bones from the Rigify rig, they have the same names, so I don't need to build the bone list. I think I can just use the same names that I already used, and I'll simply try to click retarget. And something didn't quite look right, and it seems that the torso is not set as root. So let's set it as root and try to retarget again. And now the retargeting looks correct. And if you pay attention, you'll see that the feet are not syncing as they were before. Even though we reset the original behavior of this Rigify rig, in which the upper body and lower body are kind of split in the middle, but because the Rigify rig is constrained to the simpler rig, we are able to retarget the motion correctly. And now this Rigify rig still only moves based on constraints. To finalize the motion, to move the motion really on the Rigify rig, we need to go to pose mode, select all of these bones, go to pose, animation, bake action, and bake with these options. Press OK, and that will bake the whole action onto the actual Rigify rig. As you can see here in pose mode, all bones have keyframes. And also, if we look under bone constraints, you'll see that the constraint that used to constrain this Rigify rig to the intermediate rig were removed. So this intermediate rig no longer controls the Rigify rig. And we can delete it. And that's it. Now this motion is fully transferred to the Rigify rig. Let's start talking about retargeting to IK controls. And this is an area in which AutoRig Pro shines. It has dedicated tools for retargeting to IK, which I haven't seen in other retargeting solutions. I'm still evaluating some of the add-ons, so maybe some of them support this, but so far I've only seen it in AutoRig Pro. And here I'm back in the scene where I rigged a character with the AutoRig Pro automatic rigging feature, which created this default human rig. And in the beginning of the AutoRig Pro video, I already showed you a way in which you can retarget to IK controls using the mapping presets here. And of course, the problem with these presets is that they're limited to Mixamo and Rococo for IK. So I really want to show you how we can do this manually so that you understand the process and that you can use it on any source rig and also on other non-AutoRig Pro rigs like Rigify, custom rigs, and so on. And I'll show examples of that as well. But first, let's start with this AutoRig Pro rig. I'm going to select it, go to pose mode, and under tool, settings, I'm going to reset all pose. And this will bring the AutoRig Pro rig in the default position, and arms and legs will be in IK. So this is a default AutoRig Pro rig that you would naturally see. And to make things more interesting, I'm going to get rid of this armature, which is from Mixamo, which, as you know, AutoRig Pro recognizes. And I'm going to replace it with another mocap data, something that I got from the mocap UTD library, which is a lesser known library. So I'm pretty sure that AutoRig Pro doesn't have any presets for it. So I'll delete this armature here and import an FBX and find my file from the library, select it, enable automatic bone orientation, and import. And here we have the file, and the length of the animation is like 2000 frames. And at first it stays in T-pose. These frames we can definitely get rid of to make it a little bit simpler. And then at the end, it also kind of goes into T-pose. So I'm going to delete these frames, just select them and delete them. And also the initial ones. And then I'll select all of these frames and with G move them to the beginning. And then also let's switch to timeline and set this timeline into 1450 frames or so. And now this animation that we have is still kind of long, but that's okay. I guess this will allow us to test the performance of AutoRig Pro. So let's go to AutoRig Pro and set a new armature, which is just called armature, as the source rig. And let's try to auto scale. And for some reason, the armature got much bigger than I expected. If you check the tooltip of auto scale, you will read that this function is based on the rest position. And if the rest position is incorrect, then it may not work correctly. So let's switch to rest position and see what we have. And here we have something really weird. The rest position is with the character lying down. Let's go back to pose position. And here we can use the redefine rest pose function of AutoRig Pro. I'll click on it, use rest pose, and then I'll select all bones. And from the side view, I'm going to rotate 90 degrees and then move the rig up until the feet are on the ground and click apply. And now if I click auto scale, the rig will be scaled accordingly. So earlier I mentioned some disadvantages of this redefine rest pose feature, but here we can also see how effective it can be. Here's the rest position, it has been fixed. And there are a bunch of unnecessary bones in this rig that will complicate the retargeting process. So I'm going to go to edit mode, and this end bone of the head I want to delete. These finger bones I'll also want to delete. I'll leave the hand bone here, also on the other side. And this toe end bone, delete. And now if I build my bone list, the list will only consist of bones that I actually want. And the bone matching seems to be almost okay. The hips is matched to the root bone, which is fine. I just want to set it as root. And the only problem that I noticed is that the matching of the spine bones doesn't seem quite correct. So let's select both rigs and go to pose mode. And let's see. Here we have 4 spine bones, whereas AutoRig Pro has 3. So there are different ways to handle this, but the way I'll do it is that I'll ignore the first spine bone. So I'll just remove the entry for this first spine bone and then go to the second one. And this one is correctly matched already. The next one also correctly matched, and the third one is incorrect. I'm going to switch it to spine 03.x. No, the C spine 03.x. Okay, this bone. I can also select it and use the eyedropper here. And this should be fine. However, AutoRig Pro automatically matched the FK bones. But that's okay, I can use this to show you a special feature of AutoRig Pro. So I'm going to try to retarget. And as you can see, we're going to be retargeting around 1400 frames. So let's see how long it takes for AutoRig Pro to do that. And the retargeting seems correct. It looks quite good. However, everything is in FK mode. So what we can do about this is we can go to Tool, Pose Mode, of course, and select any limb control. For example, this one. And here next to Snap IK to FK, I can click on this gears icon, and that will show additional options. And one of them is Bake IK to FK. This is a special option in AutoRig Pro, which allows us to basically convert FK action to IK action. So let's click this, and I'm going to set the end frame to 1450 or so, and press OK. And wait a while. And the process is done, and it took a while, but now we have this action in IK mode. If I scrub through, you'll see that the action is still there, but the controls are in IK mode. which is great. So this is one way to get IK motion on your AutoRig Pro rig. You can just convert it with this function. The only problem with this is that it is slow. AutoRig Pro is a little bit faster than Rigify. Rigify has a very similar feature which is even slower, but still overall it is slow. So if we can, we should try to avoid it. So let's see how we can retarget directly to the IK controls and save a lot of time. I'm going to undo. And I want to have my rig again in the default position. Go to AutoRig Pro again. I already have my bone list. So now let's try to set things up so that the motion is retargeted directly to the IK controls. The key for this with AutoRig Pro is to map the hands and feet correctly and to set up some special IK settings. So here in the bone list, I'm going to remove all entries that have to do with arms and legs and hands and feet. And now let's try to set them up. And we'll basically ignore arms, upper arm, lower arm, and so on, and also the legs. Thigh and shin we're going to ignore, and we'll just set up hands and feet. So let's select both rigs, go to pose mode, and here AutoRig Pro has a very handy feature. I can simply select a bone that I want to focus on and click this button with the two arrows, and that will focus me on this bone that I have selected. And now to this left hand, I want to match the IK control for the left hand in the AutoRig Pro rig. So I can simply select it and use the eyedropper here, and that will fill in this field. And then I have to let AutoRig Pro that this is an IK control. So click OK. And now AutoRig Pro also wants to know the pole target for this IK control. And that is this pole target here. So select it and click the eyedropper. So I can do this for the right arm as well. Select it on the source rig, focus on it, select it on AutoRig Pro, eyedropper, enable IK, select the pole, eyedropper in the pole field. Then I can do the same for the feet. Select the left foot, focus on it, select it in AutoRig Pro, eyedropper, IK, select the pole target, eyedropper. And right foot as well. Focus on it, select it, eyedropper, IK, select the pole target, eyedropper. And with that, things should actually be set up correctly because in IK mode, the entire arm moves solely based on this IK control and the pole target. So let's clear all transforms. Looks like I still have this dancing action active on the AutoRig Pro rig. I can remove it, but actually it doesn't matter. AutoRig Pro can handle this. And now I can try to retarget. And we are retargeting 1438 frames. So let's see how long it will take. Okay, that didn't take too long. And here we are. We have the action retargeted, looking good. And the whole rig is in IK mode. Legs, arms. Okay, so these are the basics of retargeting to IK controls with AutoRig Pro. I think it was fairly simple. We have to retarget to the IK controls of each limb, and we also have to correctly set up its pole target. AutoRig Pro will take care for the rest for us. And you'll see that it doesn't matter that this rig is AutoRig Pro. The same approach will work for every IK rig that you can find, as long as it has pole targets. Okay, next I'll show you the process of retargeting to IK controls with Rigify. Here I have a Rigify rig in its default state. If I go to pose mode, the arms are in IK mode, and so are the legs. So now I can set my source armature, which is my mocap rig, and let's set another action for it so that we don't always use this dancing action. Something like this. And the target armature will be my Rigify rig. I'm going to auto scale and build bone list. Also under item, I'm going to clean up my rig. In this case, I want to get rid of the FK controls. And I'm going to leave the IK controls. So in AutoRig Pro, let's start setting things up. I'll match head to head, hips to torso, and set it as root as before. And let's skip arms, hands, feet, and legs and do them at the end. So I'll scroll down. Here's the shoulder. I'm going to set it up to the shoulder. Neck, I can set to the neck bone. The right shoulder I'm going to set up as well. And the spine bones. These ones will be set up exactly as we set them up in the FK rig. So now let's start setting up the arms and legs. And again, I'm only going to focus on the hands and feet, and I'm going to skip upper arm, lower arm, thigh, and shin. Just like in AutoRig Pro. So let's select both rigs, go to pose mode, select the hand bone, focus on it, and now I want to match it to the left hand IK control. So eyedropper here, enable IK, and now we want a pole. And oh no, Rigify doesn't have any pole targets. Well, actually it does. I can just go to item, and with this IK widget selected, I'm going to click toggle pole, and that will enable the pole target. So Rigify can use this widget, and it can also have a pole, whatever you prefer. So I'm going to switch everything to pole targets, because that's what AutoRig Pro works with, legs and arms. And now I can keep retargeting. I can go back to AutoRig Pro, select my pole target for this arm, and use the eyedropper. And let's set up the other arm. Select this hand bone, focus on it, select the IK control for it, eyedropper, enable IK, grab the pole target, eyedropper. Same with the feet, select the foot, focus on it, select the corresponding IK control, eyedropper, enable IK, grab the IK pole target. These pole targets here kind of overlap, but I can select them and move them to see which one I want, and this is the one I want here. So use the eyedropper, and same on the other side. And something that I haven't set up yet are the toes. So let's find the toes. Here it is, toe base. And I want to start typing toe. And in Rigify, the toes are not dependent on IK or FK mode. The same bone is used in both. So I'll simply select the toe.l control and confirm. And then find the right toe as well. And set it to toe.r. And that's it. I think I can try to retarget now and see. Let's see what happens. Okay, I think this is looking good. So there you go. I think you can see how the process is exactly the same, whether you have an AutoRig Pro rig or a Rigify rig. In a second, I'll show you another example with a completely custom IK rig, and it's going to be exactly the same. So again, make sure that you understand your rig, retarget to the IK controls, set them up as IK, and also set up the pole targets. And retargeting to IK controls should work. Okay, let's go to my custom rig. Here's my custom rig. The legs and arms are in IK mode, and I have pole targets. So I should be able to retarget to this easily. Here I have my source armature. I'm going to give it an action. Let's see what I have. Maybe a sneaky walk. All right. And now I'm going to set up my source armature. It is already set up. And let's set up the target armature as well. Click auto scale, build bone list. And now I can start matching the bones. Again, it is always important to understand your rig. So here for the head bone, I have a head bone in my custom rig. So I'll set it up again. Then we have the hips, and this is my hips control. So I'm going to use the eyedropper to fill in this field and set it as root as always. So again, I'll go ahead and set up everything aside from the arms and legs. So that will be the spine, the shoulder bones, the neck bone, And that's it actually. Okay, let's try to set up the IK stuff exactly the same way as before. I'll go to object mode, select both of my armatures, go to pose mode, select the hand of the source rig, focus on it, grab my IK control and use the eyedropper to fill in this field. Tell AutoRig Pro that this is IK, select my pole target and again use the eyedropper to populate this field. Same on the other side. And same for the feet. This is my feet control. I'll retarget to it for the foot, set it as IK, grab my pole, and use the eyedropper. Same on the other side. Let's also set up the toes. We have to retarget to the toe base. Basically, anytime you see a bone that has the end suffix, most of the time it is safe to ignore it, and you can even delete it from a source armature. But here I want to retarget the toes to the toe base. So let's look for toe and find my toe.l. And right toe base, toe.r. And I can see that I forgot to set up the shoulders. And everything should be set up now. Again, I'm not retargeting to the upper arm, upper leg, and lower leg. In this rig in particular, if I rotate this lower arm, you'll see that it kind of changes the orientation of the elbow. So if we did retarget to this, while we are also retargeting to the IK pole target, then our retargeted action will not be correct. So in such cases, it is especially important to skip retargeting to some bones. And before we can retarget, our target rig is in A pose, whereas the source armature is in T pose. So let's go to redefine rest pose, click OK. And here, because I haven't matched the upper arm and so on, I cannot really use the copy selected bones rotation feature, but that's okay. I'm simply going to rotate the bones manually, 30 degrees and minus 30 degrees on the other side, and click apply. And now I should be able to retarget. Let's try. And there is our targeted motion to our completely custom IK rig. So I'm finding retargeting to IK controls with AutoRig Pro to be a really good experience. It's easy and it works really well. So we covered almost all of the remap features of AutoRig Pro. In the remaining minutes, I want to give you an overview of some of the other features that the add-on has, and you may find them useful from time to time. Below the source armature, we have this in-place option, and this setting is useful for stuff like walk cycles and other actions where the character is moving forward in space. So for example, if I switch to the walk action, here we have the character walking forward in space. And if I enable the in place option, the action will change and you'll see that it's called walk in place. And now if I play the action, the forward motion of the armature was removed. And that's it. It's a nice feature. Keep in mind that it is kind of limited to walk cycles and other actions where the forward motion is constant. And I found a little weirdness in the way it works. For example, if I disable the in place option here, which by the way enables the walk, the normal walk action, which moves forward in space. But now if I switch to another action, for example, the sneaky walk, and enable in place, it will switch back to walk in place, to the walking action which walks in place. Whereas I expected it to convert the sneaky walk to in place. But if I go back to walk sneak, disable in place and then enable it again, then finally I'll have the walk sneak in place action. Okay, Then next to the retarget button, we have this gears icon. If I click on it, it will show these additional options, bind only and unbind only. You may have seen them throughout the video when I accidentally clicked on this icon. But bind only will constrain our target rig to the source rig, and that will allow us to quickly preview the action that we have before we actually bake it with the retarget button. So I'll click on it. And here you can see that the source armature will play this action. However, if we go to pause mode, you'll see that there are no keyframes and there is a constraint on each bone. And so my target armature is constrained to the source armature, and that is meant for quick preview. Once you preview your action and decide that it looks good, you should go to object mode, and I would recommend that you click unbind only. That will unbind both skeletons and then actually retarget. And then you have your final action. Now I'm going to undo. And there are a couple of additional retargeting options in here that we haven't talked about. So let's select the FK rig, go to pause mode, select the foot, and I'm going to use this button to focus on it. And now, even though this is a simple FK rig, AutoRig Pro has features to make this into a simple IK leg. So I'm going to enable IK and skip the pole target, and then enable add IK constraint. And let's do the same on the other side. IK and add IK constraint, and then try to retarget. And you'll see that the action was retargeted correctly. But if I go to pause mode for this leg, you'll see that there is an IK constraint on this leg. And if I grab the foot, I can tweak it as an IK leg. And I can twist the thigh to orient the knee. And that can be a nice way to get IK controls on an FK rig. However, if I disable the IK control, you'll see that actually AutoRig Pro disconnected this bone, unparented this bone from the shin. So it changed the hierarchy of the rig. So that is something to keep in mind. If the hierarchy of the rig is something that is important to you, then you may want to avoid this feature, or you may want to create an intermediate rig, as I showed you earlier with Retarget Helper. There are many approaches that you can take. And the auto poll option, I think it works only if you have actual poll targets enabled in here in this field. And according to the manual, if enabled, the IK poll will move like it's parented to the IK target bone, for example, the foot bone. And honestly, I'm not sure what that means. I wish the manual would say in what cases that is useful. But who knows, maybe it makes sense to you and you'll find it useful. And finally, there is the location option. And again, it's not an option that I have used personally, but it is supposed to enable location retargeting. If we click on bind only and go to pause mode, you'll see that all bones, aside from the root has copy rotation and copy location on it, but all other bones are constrained with copy rotation only. Now if I undo, and let's select one of the bones, for example, the spine bone, and enable location for it and bind again. And now you'll see that this bone also has copy location on it. And according to the manual, this is useful for retargeting facial animation, which is something that I'm going to cover later in other videos. So for now, I don't have a very good example for using this location setting. And finally, let's take a look at the interactive tweaks. These are relatively simple tools that allow you to tweak your retargeted motion after the fact. And they only work when the action is already baked. So I'm going to unbind and retarget again. Now I have a baked retargeted motion. And so I can expand the interactive tweaks. And you'll see that this allows you to tweak the rotation and location of your retargeting. And these features work very seamlessly and intuitively with the AutoRig Pro humanoid rig. But here I'm going to demonstrate on this rig, and I think this will help you understand what actually happens when you use these options. So the first very important thing to understand is what is being tweaked. You're tweaking the bone, the target bone that is highlighted in this menu here. So right now it is spine 003. If I go to pause mode, even though I notice I often just select the bone and try to use these options, and I expect the selected bone to be a tweak, but really it is the highlighted bone here. But what you can do is select the bone that you want to tweak and click the double arrows here, and that will highlight the bone, and now you can tweak it in here. Now let's switch this window to Graph Editor. And that will help us understand what the tweaks actually do. So now I'm going to want to tweak the rotation of this arm. So let's hide all location and scale curves. And I'm going to zoom in on my rotation curves. And you'll see that they are in quaternion mode, which is the default mode of all bones in Blender. And now let's try to tweak the X rotation of this bone. And you'll see that actually the W quaternion curve is being moved. So when you click one of these buttons, what it does is it just moves one of these curves up and down, the whole curve. So it is kind of the same as selecting it and moving it, but using this interface may be a little bit more intuitive. And so back to the rotations, all of the bones of this rig are actually in quaternion mode. You'll see it under item, rotation is set to quaternion. And the AutoRig Pro tweaks work only with Oilers. So what you can do here is select all your bones and go to Pose, Convert Rotation Modes. And if you don't have this feature, that means that you don't have Rigify enabled. For some reason, even though this is not a Rigify feature, it is packaged with Rigify. So enable Rigify if you want it. And here I'm going to want to affect all bones and only the current action. And I want to convert to XYZ Euler and just press OK. And now if I look at my arm, you'll see that it is now converted to XYZ Euler. Now if I press the plus X or minus X button, you'll see that only the X Euler curve is being affected. And so this allows me to tweak my retargeted motion. For example, here I change the rotation of the arm, and that will stay throughout the whole action. And these tweaks can be very useful when working with an IK rig. Often the height of the hips may not look quite right after retargeting, so I can select my hips here, focus on it with this button, and now I want to move it up and down in space. So let's see which axis that is, not the Z axis. Yeah, it's the Y axis, so I'm going to move it on -Y a little bit, and that was too much. Let's undo, and let's make this tweak value to 0.01 or so. And so I need to bring the hips forward a little bit as well, something like this. And that allowed me to easily tweak the height of the hips. Something cool about these interactive tweaks is that it kind of remembers the original settings, the original values. So if I press this X button, the original height of the hips will be reset. Before we wrap things up, I have this example with this dinosaur, and you may have seen this in the Rococo video already, but I think it's an important point that I want to make, and that is that we can retarget to characters that are not necessarily humanoid, whereas a source armature is generally quite humanoid. And so to save some time, I have already matched the bones. I think we did the matching process quite a lot, so it should be second nature to you by now. And now I'll auto scale, which I've already done. And now something very important is the rest position of these rigs. The source rig is obviously in T-pose, whereas the dinosaur has a completely different pose. So let's try to redefine the rest pose. I'll start from the rest pose, press OK. And now just to see what happens, I'm going to select all bones and copy selected bones rotations. And you'll see that my source armature assumed this pose of the dinosaur. And let's apply and see what happens if we did retarget this action, which is a walk cycle. Retarget, okay. And you'll see that my dinosaur is kind of walking upright, a bit like a human. And that's interesting, but it's definitely not what we want. So let's undo. And I'll undo before I apply this new rest pose. So let's cancel this now. and try to redefine the rest pose again. And this time I'll just select the arms and click copy selected bone rotations, apply, retarget, and now I get something that is much closer to what I imagined, which is the dinosaur keeping its natural pose but still appearing to walk. It's floating a bit above the ground, but I guess I could use the interactive tweaks to fix that. I'll push the location a little bit down on the Z axis, and now the dinosaur is walking on the ground. I hope you enjoyed this video about the retargeting features of AutoRig Pro. And if you don't already have AutoRig Pro, I hope it also helped you decide whether AutoRig Pro is worth it for you. If you're interested in the topic of retargeting, I'll keep making videos about that. I'll keep covering more retargeting tools, and later in the series we'll also talk about cleaning up, tweaking, and combining retargeted motions. Big thanks to my supporters. Please click like, subscribe, and hope to see you in the next video.